All right, so the Tower of Inferno is nothing but rubble. The Crimson Jester? He's ash. And on the gray shores of Neo-Arcadia, you've got a totally defeated Faustus getting let's call it a lecture from his master Mephistopheles. See, this isn't just an epilogue to the Wotan saga. Oh no, this is the opening act for something way more terrifying, the War of the Tides. And Mephistopheles kicks things off with this single line that just sends a shiver down your spine. It sets the theme for everything that's about to happen. You remember all that chaos, the fire, the passion, that whole individual will that defined the last conflict? Mephistopheles is saying, yeah, that was just a flash in the pan. The real game, the new game, is about something much older, way colder, and just absolute. So what's he getting at here? Well, Mephistopheles is basically telling Faustus, and us, that the entire fireworks show with the Crimson Jester was just the opening act, a failed experiment in rebellion. While everyone, Wotan included, was distracted by the flames, something else entirely was being forged down in the silent depths. And this right here, this gets to the absolute heart of the shift. The Crimson Jester was all about chaotic motion, creating heat, pure, unfiltered individual expression. But he's gone. The new player on the board, the Sapphire Jester, represents the polar opposite. A philosophy of absolute order, but an order that's achieved by erasing individuality itself. Now, to explain where this new jester came from, Mephistopheles starts telling a story, a parable. But I want you to forget everything you know about a hero's journey. This is not a climb toward the light. This is an inverted journey, a purposeful nosedive into oblivion. And it all begins with a single, self-aware drop of water. The protagonist of this origin story is what's so critical. It's a single droplet, yeah? But one that's cursed with what the source material calls the terrible freedom of self-awareness. It looks at its own unique reflection and feels not pride, but just absolute, paralyzing horror at its own existence. And this is where the philosophy gets really juicy. We all know Wotan preaches amor fati, the love of fate, right? Well, this little droplet discovers its perfect opposite, odium fati, the hatred of fate. It doesn't want to be a sovereign being. It craves the kind of peace that can only come from non-existence. So, how does it go about achieving this? First, it rejects that natural upward drive toward light and life. Instead, it lets itself get caught in something called a predatory current, an architecture that, of course, Mephistopheles himself designed. This current pulls it down, whispering promises of sweet oblivion, convincing the droplet that its uniqueness is just an error that the silence of the abyss will correct. So where does this dark journey lead? Not to some fiery hell of punishment, no. It leads to something far more sterile, and honestly, way more horrifying. A place where the droplet can finally be unmade. This place is called the industrial core of the void. It's at the very bottom of the world, totally beyond the reach of Wotan's divine power. There's no passion here, no chaos. Just the cold, humming efficiency of a factory whose only product is nothingness. Inside this core, the droplet isn't punished or purified. It's processed. Its unique shimmer, the very thing that makes it an individual, is treated like a flaw, a manufacturing defect. It gets stripped away and melted down, not to become something new, but to become exactly the same as everything else. And this just summarizes the result perfectly. The Crimson Jester was a conflagration, a chaotic fire that bled irony. The Sapphire Jester? He's a tool. He bleeds nothing because there is nothing inside him. He isn't a being, he is a function, just an interchangeable part in a great, unfeeling machine. This line right here gets to the heart of what makes him so terrifying. When you look at him, you don't see a rival. You don't see a personality. You see a perfect reflection of the void, a chilling reminder of the non-existence he wants to return you to. Okay, so we've seen how this new jester was made. Now let's look at how he operates, because it's not with force. He is a weapon of silence, and his methods are as alien as his origin. Think about it. Wotan fights with thunder and lightning. The Sapphire Jester's method is erosion. He doesn't shatter his enemies, he simply washes over them, again and again until they forget they were ever separate from the sea. His weapon is assimilation, his sound is silence, and his ultimate promise is this horrifying form of peace. You'll never be lonely again because you will simply cease to be. And here we get this terrifying inversion. Mephistopheles reveals that the very concept of the open ocean, that classic symbol of boundless freedom, has been weaponized. It's not a space for exploration anymore.
It's a liquid cage, an endless army of conformity.
And all of this entire parable, it's all been building to the new cosmic wager. The last conflict was about whether a cage could hold a fire. This new one poses an even more fundamental question.
Can a star burn underwater? I mean, can Wotan's will to power, his whole philosophy of fiery, sovereign individuality, actually survive against the crushing, silent pressure of the Jester's will to nothingness? That is the central question for the next great war.
Now, while Mephistopheles is explaining all this, a very different scene is unfolding. Up on the Emerald Spire, Wotan and his allies are celebrating their victory. The source calls it a moment of agonizing joy. They think they've won. They have no idea.
But that victory celebration is pretty short-lived. The silence is broken not by thunder, but by the sound of water. The ocean around their new world begins to boil, but not with heat. It's boiling with a cold, eerie blue light. The new threat has arrived.
And then he just steps out of the waves, sleek, crystalline, and completely faceless. He doesn't give a speech. He doesn't mock them. He simply raises a hand and points at the Emerald Spire, and its very foundations began to dissolve. Not rotting, not breaking, just ceasing to be.
Wotan sees this, and he understands immediately. He recognizes the absolute antithesis to his entire existence. The fire is out, he says. Now comes the flood. The age of heat is over. The age of cold has just begun.
And we're left with Mephistopheles, watching from a distance with a smile completely devoid of humor. His experiment isn't over. It's just entered its next terrifying phase. His final words hang in the air, leaving us with the ultimate question. Let us see if the Overman can swim.